We are now recording this. We are now going to record this for later posting on our website. So once again, this is Ben Kaufman from the Rails to Trails Conservancy.
Thanks, Tom. All right. So I'm not going to say that all again for the recording, so apologies, future recording. But yes, I am. You can see my information on the screen here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our organization, what we do, and then kind of drill it down to our work in the Bay Area. Can everyone see my screen?
I can.
All right. Excellent.
Yes. Yeah, it looks good.
Cool. All right, so a little bit about Rails to Trails in general. So our organization is dedicated to creating a nationwide network of trails from former rail lines and connecting corridors to build healthier places for healthier people. We talked a little bit before some of you arrived about the idea of converting former rail lines to trails. We have now kind of expanded our work to just trails in general around the country, so they don't have to be former rail lines, although that is our bread and butter. And we're really focused on kind of networks of trails these days and connecting people to places. We have three kind of overarching components of our work. One is trail projects, which is kind of planning, building, technical assistance of trails. Two is policy work, so securing federal funding for trails and defending legal attacks on trails. And then three is trail promotion. So we have a magazine, we have a blog, we have a website, and then we have this funky tool called Traillink, which is both a website and an app, which is basically the all trails for Rails to Trails around the country. So it's kind of flat, wide kind of trails that are accessible for folks from 8 to 80. And it's a great resource for if you're looking for a rail trail in your area. So just a little bit about our work and how we've accomplished over the past umpteen years. So in '86, when we were founded, there were 250 miles of open multi-use trails around the country, and now there are almost 25,000 miles around the country. So this is not all thanks to us, but there is obviously a lot of momentum behind this and a lot of work being done. Obviously, people are interested in active transportation, walking and biking these days, and that is reflected in the country. And hopefully, we get some serious federal funding over the next year or two to help support this work. So you can see this is a screenshot from Traillinkcom. Which if you go there, you can zoom into all the various trails or rail trails around the country. A whole bunch of rail trails are in the Northeast and Midwest, but the West Coast is fairly well represented in LA, Seattle, Portland, and the Bay Area. So that's, a little bit about the organization as a whole. I want to talk a little bit about Trail Nation, which is our work as an organization trying to develop connected networks of trails around the country. So we are active in 8 regions, metropolitan regions around the country, bringing together trail coalitions to develop regional trail networks. So you see here, we're active in Baltimore, kind of Pittsburgh and Eastern Ohio, Milwaukee, Southern Texas, Miami, DC, in the Bay Area, where we're trying to build out a regional trail network in that region. So really quick, BATSI. So the Bay Area Trails Collaborative, otherwise known as BATSI, is our local regional trail coalition. Our mission statement is to advocate for the completion and stewardship of a 2,500 plus mile regional trail network connecting the region's 8 million plus residents, schools, residents to schools, transit, jobs, goods and services, friends and neighbors, open space and outdoor recreation to enhance quality of life for all Bay Area residents. And our vision as you can see on the map, is a world-class interconnected network of regional trails benefiting everyone here. So this is a very oversimplified version of the map that I will get into in a minute. But we are made up of over 50 organizations, agencies, and private firms, and we're working to create this regional network vision. As you all probably know, the Bay Area is notoriously siloed, so our effort is really to bring people together and to be thinking regionally about active transportation and trails specifically. So collectively, we have great expertise and capacity in the Trails and Greenways field, and we've joined together to create the first sustained regional coalition of trail groups collaborating to advance a big regional transformative vision. So we're creating momentum together and demonstrating that we're greater than the sum of our parts, and that this trail network isn't just a vision or a dream, but it can actually become a real thing on the ground. But we have to show that in a variety of ways. So one of the things that we're doing, oh, and I should just kind of shout out to some of these partners, including East Bay Regional Parks, which is involved, Alta Planning and Design, the Coastal Conservancy, the Ridge Trail, the Bay Trail, and National Park Service. So we are a large group and we are a diverse group, and we're trying to, herd the cats so that we have a collective vision that we're moving forward together. So this is these are our 13 priority projects. This is one way that we're trying to kind of focus our efforts around the region. So the first one of our priority projects is the Guadalupe River Trail down in San Jose that we're trying to close a gap on. The East Bay Greenway, which would be essentially the Ohlone Greenway along the BART tracks from downtown Oakland to South Hayward, that we're trying to move forward. The Richmond Greenway in Richmond, that is also just has one small piece that needs to be complete over, I think, a 1-block intersection for us to be connected from North Berkeley to Marin entirely by trail. The Smart Pathway, which is along the Smart Train right-of-way in the North Bay from Marin to Sonoma, Larkspur to eventually Cloverdale. The Bay to Sea Trail, which is in the South Bay, kind of connecting Half Moon Bay to Redwood City. And the west span of the Bay Bridge, which I alluded to earlier, but both a permanent version of the project and a more short-term version of the project, if possible, to get something on the ground now so that we're connected and don't have to wait the 10 to 30 years projected for a final gap closure there. So regional benefits of this vision are protecting the environment, creating smart active transportation options, promoting social equity, improving recreation, health and wellness, and strengthening the local and regional economy. I don't think I have to delve into those too much. I think you all probably understand how active transportation can contribute to all of these aspects of a region's, well-being. And I just would note that, improving recreation, health, and wellness, I think, has become even more important since the pandemic, and we've seen a renewed interest in and passion for trails as we went into the pandemic and as we're emerging from it, because we are desiring outside time and mental health and ways to kind of get off of a computer screen, and trails give people of all ages and abilities a way to do that. Some of our goals and strategies as a regional coalition are to obviously promote this vision for a world-class regional trail network, to advocate for increased funding for trails around the region, both locally, regionally, statewide, etc. Working to advance the 13 priority projects that I alluded to earlier, and then mapping and analyzing the regional trail network through GIS to demonstrate how a complete network promotes connectivity. Accomplishments are, we are almost 100% complete and ready to roll out the first ever Bay Area Regional Trail Network map. We've kind of had, like alpha versions, beta versions, and we are almost completely done with it. I can give you a very quick sneak peek of what it's going to look like at the end of this presentation. We also are trying to work on various ways to get consistency in the region for trail count the trail count program, and ways of consolidating or at least streamlining data so that everyone's kind of on the same page and using the same methodologies throughout the region for both funding purposes, but also just general understanding of how people are using trails and active transportation facilities. So we're working with MTC on that, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, our regional transportation body. And then we're working to obviously increase funding. So we've been successful in increasing active transportation program funding. There's going to be an influx this year of $500 million additional dollars, we think, into that program, which is the statewide fund for active transportation projects. There's also the Proposition 68 fund, which is helps to fund trails and greenways connected to the coast. Regional Measure 3, which was a bridge toll that is still being litigated in courts, but will be additional funding for trails and active transportation, and priority conservation areas, which will help to increase funding for trails as well. So I think that is essentially it. I wanted to leave questions at the end, but I guess if you all have, the only other thing that I was gonna mention was the Great Redwood Trail, if folks are aware of it. Can anyone give me a nod or a shake, depending on whether you know about the Great Redwood Trail?
Not me.
Great. Okay. Well, just really quickly, because it's an exciting project that we're helping to work on. There is a state senator named Mike McGuire, who is in Marin, Mendocino, and Humboldt, represents Marin, Mendocino, and Humboldt, who has really taken the lead on this project to develop a rail trail that uses the former North Coast Railroad Authority's right-of-way from Larkspur all the way up to Arcata and even beyond. And so if you see it follows the 101, follows the SMART pathway, which is the new rail line that goes from Marin to Sonoma, all the way up to Cloverdale, but then it continues up along this old rail right of way, follows the 101 for a while, but then there's a huge part along the Eel River where it's, it's at least 60 miles away from, the closest road. And it's quite stunning. There's a great blog on this by Charlie Gandry, I believe is his name. I can link it to you or share it with you all. Just kind of he hikes the old right of way and has some stunning photos and some funny stories about it. But it's going to be a 316-mile rail trail. It's going to be the longest rail trail in the country once it gets built, and it's making its way through the state legislature right now for a variety of logistical reasons and funding. But there's just a lot to get excited about there. So I'd encourage you all to look it up and get to know about it, because it's going to be a big deal once it's complete, and it's exciting to follow it on the news. And Mike McGuire deserves a lot of credit for pushing it forward in the state legislature. So I think that is all I have. It was a little bit of a hodgepodge presentation, but want to leave it up to questions from you all about our work, my work, Rails to Trails in general. Anything you got?
All right, my first question is going to be, what exciting new project is coming along? And you just told us about the Redwood Trail. Will that be next year? It'll be ready, the whole thing?
Yeah. I think by April.
Or will it not be ready until COVID is over, which backs it up a bit? All right,
yeah, it's going to be a while. It's going to be, well, there are parts of it that are being built right now there's a few parts that are complete, but the full thing is going to take many years. So, hopefully by the time, we'll see it complete, but I wouldn't necessarily count on it.
Questions then?
See, a quick question from Ian McDonald here. since Rails to Trails certainly would not have eminent domain capability, with something like that Great Redwood Trail, I'm sure a lot of that, what is it, the Northern Pacific or whatever, whatever the rail line was, I'll bet a lot of it has been either sold off or somehow acquired to private hands. How are you going to acquire the lands or reclaim them?
Yeah, so interestingly, in the land was actually not sold off or given, sold off to private owners or sold in parcels or anything of the sort. It has been maintained by the state. The state had an authority that was trying to resuscitate the rail line for many years. It just kept on like basically falling into the river due to flooding and a variety of other factors, and there was no feasible path to resuscitate it. Like they were trying to resuscitate it as a freight line, I believe, not passenger rail, and that's what it had been. It had been an old logging rail, freight rail system, and so they were trying to bring it back, but they just couldn't do it, and so they've maintained the right of way throughout all these years. Part of what Rails to Trails does and why we're quote unquote experts in the field is because we were formed actually on this concept of rail banking, which is part of a 1983 congressional act. Rail banking is the idea of before a rail line goes into abandonment, a local community group or agency can say, hey, don't abandon the rail line because that means you're going to sell it in those parcels that you speak of. Why don't you give it to us? We'll pay you some money for a community benefit, and we'll maintain the right of way and build a trail on it for interim use until you guys need it again. And so, the rail company says, okay, we could do that. We'll give it to you for some money as long as we can retain we still have the right to build it back into a rail whenever we want it. We have some money in the interim. We don't have to deal with all the logistics of selling it off as parcels. And so there's been this great kind of relationship between agencies and former freight rail owners where they can give it to the community, it can become a trail, and then they can take it back whenever they want. Now, interestingly, only twice in the history of rail trails has it ever been reverted back to a rail right-of-way. It's basically all these trails have been kept as trails since they were converted to trails. So it's a nice kind of symbiotic relationship between the two entities, and that's something that we have a lot of information on our website and, are generally experts in the field on, and that's what we help communities to do if they have rail right of way in their backyard.
Good explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Mike Wheel posted something.
Yeah, do you want to read it or you want me to state it?
Go ahead. Just ask a question or whatever.
Really, it's about the two bridges in the Bay Area. This is a crystal ball, but any news on the full western access from TI to the city, and then also the Richmond San Rafael Bridge? I think I just saw another question. Originally, that was a 4-year study. I think COVID increased the use, but is that still the case? Is there a chance that access could be revoked?
Yeah, I'll answer your second question first. Very much so. It's definitely something that we're monitoring. For better or worse, the MTC and whoever else is kind of deciding if and when that trail gets converted back to a lane of traffic. There's been no like input on what the qualifications would be or the metrics would be and making that determination. So there's definitely some folks that are very keen on turning it into a third traffic lane, and a whole lot of folks that are keen on retaining the active transportation right of way. So that is going to be a big for lack of a better word, battle in a couple of years' time when the pilot project is over. But you know, we hope that there is the foresight to maintain the right of way for bikes and peds and scooters and whatever else. And there is infrastructure being built on both sides, as well as a new electric bike share program, at least being started on the Richmond side and potentially being started on the Marin side soon, where it's going to be using the same bike share program. So you can take a one-way e-bike from one side to the other. So there's some sort of movement in terms of actually making it more accessible and easier for folks to use, which is hopeful for the future of the project, but it's definitely not a done deal, and we'll be rallying our supporters in a couple of years to maintain that right of way. I think the trail or the project was open in November 19, so November 2023, mark your calendars. In terms of the west span of the Bay Bridge, as a personal passion of mine, that is something I worked on. I think someone mentioned Dave Campbell earlier, maybe that was you, Mike, earlier, and we were working early on in the pandemic to convert a traffic lane to a bike ped facility on the Bay Bridge as an interim project while traffic was so far down, you know, in the Bay Area that it just didn't matter anymore, and people were too scared to take BART, too scared to take AC Transit to commute, as particularly the essential workers. So we were trying to work with Caltrans and MTC to develop that as a quick build project. And we got pretty far, but then things started picking back up again and felt like it was not, you know, they felt like it wasn't the time and place. And so we're a little bit at an impasse there, but there is, you know, we are still supportive of the permanent project. The permanent project is incredibly expensive. It's around $400 to $500 million. But they just got some funding to build out the project on Treasure Island and Yerba Buena Island. So that's kind of happening. I think they're going to finish all the work that you all were talking about early on at the meeting in the next couple months. And so we are anticipating that being done. And, you know, initial projections are, you know, some projections are 10 to 30 years in the future, but there are, you know, there are folks that are hopeful that it might be sooner than that, that we see a full build out of the west span protected bike lane. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rick.
I have a question. Yeah. You mentioned earlier the Guadalupe River Parkway or path. The other trail that goes through San Jose is Coyote Creek, and it starts kind of in mid San Jose and goes way south, but there's a gap between like McCarthy Ranch down further down. Is there any plan to close that gap?
That is a great question. I know that they just closed the gap on Coyote Creek in the last 2 weeks. I wish I had better knowledge of the San Jose street grid to know what the what the termini of that gap closure were. But rest assured, they are working on it. Eve Zudi and Liz Sewell are the two folks in San Jose that are kind of the trail team there. Liz came from Trails Conservancy and just started there less than a year ago. She's a close colleague of mine, and they have a whole, there's a San Jose, like an interactive San Jose bike map online, and that you would be able to see where the plans to develop the trail are. That won't give you too many details about what's in the works right now, but they are definitely aware of it and trying to close all gaps in the trail network, particularly on Coyote Creek.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Ben, you said you'd give us a peek at the app or the online map.
Yeah, so I can do that. Let me hold on one second. So this is not 100% final, but folks see my screen?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So this is, you know, we have gone through a whole long process of this, but this is effectively what the trail network is going to look like, you know, both existing and proposed in the future. And we're going to kind of go through a whole marketing campaign in the fall to kind of share this with folks and the region as a whole. So it's kind of going to be our kickoff of our coalition and trying to broaden our coalition and our everyone who knows about us, but this is effectively what it's going to look like. And I would say stay tuned and follow Rails to Trails and our work. You can find us at railstotrails.org/BATSI, which is Bay Area Trails Collaborative. And we'll have all the information there to get you excited about the regional trail network.
Excuse me, on that map, was the green future and the yellow current? Is that the?
That's correct. Yeah, with some exceptions, there's some segments that, you know, are not trail yet, but they're existing facilities, and so we acknowledge them as such. But are, you know, it's kind of like a needs improvement segment. So yeah, this is our website, and we're gonna revamp it for when the trail network is ready to share with the general public, and we hope you know, stay in touch and stay informed of all the awesome work that's going on in the Bay
Your work
Area.
your work is really great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll appreciate it, and our children and grandchildren, I imagine.
Yeah, sadly, I feel like they might appreciate it more than us, but you know, at least someone's going to appreciate it.
We'll have e-bikes to use it, right?
Yeah,
Nuclear,
definitely.
Probably, yeah.
Mike, or Ben, the Tomales Bay, Highway 1 used to have a rail going the whole stretch all the way up. You can still see the berms, the embankments, whatever you call it, or the rail beds. Is any part of that recoverable, or is it just too far gone? Because Highway 1 is such a, you know, with all the RVs and hay trucks and distracted drivers.
Yeah, well, so actually I've got this map up right now, so I'm gonna share with you. So this is Caltrans's District 4 Bike Plan web map, conveniently also on one of my 7,000 tabs. So as you can see on Tomales Bay, Caltrans has a Class 1 facility, which is a trail proposed for the east side of Tomales Bay. So, you know, it's, if you look at the legend right here, and this is all public, it's a mid-tier project, whatever that means. I guess it means that it's not happening first. But that's all to say that it seems to be on Caltrans's radar, and at least it's making its way into plans. So we have it in our map, and we're excited for it to move forward. So I don't know if this is on that exact right of way, but I would hope that they would use the old right of way. I don't know the status of that right of way though.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Thank you. I'll check out the District 4 info.
Yeah.
And isn't the infrastructure bill that's being debated right now in Congress going to help with this kind of an issue? It's not just cars, right?
It is, well, without getting too much into policy, because this is not my forte, it is a lot. The Senate bill, the bill coming out of the Senate is a lot more about cars than the bill coming out of the House. And so that's not to say that the $3.5 billion plan that's being negotiated and planning to go through reconciliation will not include transportation, but the Invest Act, which is the bill that came out of the House, is definitely a lot more focused on active transportation and would have a lot more bikeped components in it, as well as transit. So Senate is a lot more lean and a lot more car centric.
Very diplomatic.
Anything else? I guess I can stop sharing my screen. But there's plenty of tabs if anyone wants to see any of the other ones.
To get particular, how is the smart train adjacent trail going with progress?
Slowly. They just hired a couple of folks to help move it along. They also have their regional measure failed last year or 2 years ago. I think it was an eighth of a cent sales tax to help continue the smart rail into the future and build it north to Cloverdale. But it failed, and it failed in large part due to the fact that the bikeped community wasn't on board with it because it didn't fulfill the promises of the bikeped community that were made initially. So there is I think a major effort amongst smart staff and the folks that are working on the rail line to involve the bikeped community a lot more in the future to ensure that future ballot measures pass. So we've seen an increased or renewed effort to, involve the bikeped, and we're hopeful about that. But yeah, up until recently, it's been, from personally as a rider, a Marin rider, occasionally a Sonoma rider, it's been pretty piecemeal, and they kind of have gone after the low hanging fruits, and even then, they're kind of building out subpar facilities. So we're hoping to get them on board to build a trail throughout the entire 70-mile right of way, and we'll see what happens.
So was the sales tax measure for both the trail and the train?
There was a commitment in the initial sales tax measure for a trail alongside the train. You'd have to ask a lawyer as to whether that is legally, if they were legally bound to build a trail throughout the entire right of way. But that was kind of the controversy, is there was like this commitment, and then there was a little bit of a walk back being like, well, we didn't really define what a trail is, we figure sharrows are trails, kind of that sort of language. So they were talking about a bicycle facility alongside it, and we've been working with Marin County Bicycle Coalition, Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition to build the trail. And we're hopeful. We're more hopeful now than we have been, but yeah, there's a little bit of foot dragging over there.
Okay, thank you.
Well, in the absence of other pressing questions, Ben, thank you very much for spending this time with us. Fascinating information about this program, about the network of trails, and hope we'll be hearing more from you in the near future.
A quick question though, what's that background photo, Ben?
Yeah, I was just about to answer, Ian. It is the Silver Divide in the Sierras, and excitingly, I am actually going to take some time off work in September to hike the John Muir Trail. So I will be back there. This was a photo that I took a year or two ago along the John Muir Trail near Lake Virginia. And I've never done a through hike before, and I'm excited to. So hopefully the fires don't get me, but that's the plan.
Yeah, congratulations. Great.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Thank you.